So it's really paying attention to the sensations that come up when that story is being expressed. And it's really about interrupting the story and letting the body do its own expression and letting that get acknowledged. And I find that once that story or the tendency to go to that story gets severed, it frees the pain. Or how can we bring our awareness to the things that are present rather than letting the mind go to a story? And I find that if one can do that, it starts to release the pain.
Welcome to Beyond the Pain, the podcast that explores what it really takes to break free from chronic pain and reclaim your life. I'm your host, Leigh Brandon, and someone who's spent over 2 decades helping people get to the root cause of pain that no one else could explain. Whether you're dealing with long-term back issues, joint pain, nerve discomfort, or mysterious symptoms that just won't go away, this show is here to help you go deeper. Because beyond the pain, there's clarity, strength, and power waiting for you. Each week, we'll uncover the physical, emotional, biochemical, and energetic causes of pain and how to transform them. Let's dive deep into this week's episode. What if persistent pain isn't only influenced by what is happening within the body, but also by the relationship we have with ourselves? For many people, physical pain and emotional pain become deeply intertwined. Persistent symptoms can affect our confidence, identity, and sense of connection, while chronic stress, unresolved emotions, and a lack of self-care may also influence how safe and supported we feel within our own bodies. My guest this week is Lindsay Little, whose own search for answers began after a serious health crisis and an autoimmune diagnosis. Despite believing she was living a healthy life, Lindsay felt as though her body was shutting down. That experience led her to explore massage therapy, somatic practices, and the relationship between the body, emotions, and personal development. In our conversation, we explore whether physical pain causes emotional pain, whether emotional pain can contribute to physical symptoms, or whether the relationship works in both directions. We also discuss what self-love really means, why it involves far more than occasional acts of self-care, and how mindfulness, healthier boundaries, and understanding the ways we give and receive love may help us build a more supportive relationship with ourselves. So, could learning to listen and care for yourself differently become an important part of your recovery from persistent pain? Well, let's get into the conversation. Lindsay, welcome to Beyond the Pain. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Leigh. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, you're very welcome. So what I like to do with my guests is get them to introduce themselves into the show, because you can introduce you far better than I can. So before we get into the kind of deep aspects of pain, could you share a little bit about your own journey and how you came to explore the relationship between pain, the body, past experience, and presence?
Yeah, I can answer that many ways, I'm sure. um, let's see. I would say it's been this lifelong journey just in my work life and my personal life. It's really been part of my whole world. Just emotional pain, physical pain. And so really I've been in an exploration of that. How can I be more expressed in the world, in my life, and enjoy my life better? So I would say trying to figure out how I can, I just have so many experiences. It's kind of hard to pinpoint the one time or the one experience with pain that really got me thinking of this path.
Maybe start at the beginning.
Yeah, well, the beginning
what was the first experience?
I think just in childhood, growing up, I had a beautiful family. I still have a beautiful family, and had parents that loved me. And I didn't always feel met by my family. I like to do things differently than those in my family. I was the only left-handed person. Not that that means much, but there's just a way that I would experience things or be curious about things that felt a little different than others around me. And so I really started blending in as a way of living. And
Mm,
so there was always that pain of how can I be more myself? And so even going into college, I wasn't quite sure what to study, how I wanted to explore things in the world because I had so many different interests. And was it kinesiology? Was it something health related? Something, psychology related? So that's just kind of been my inner landscape or was my inner landscape growing up. And I've always been one to follow different threads of curiosity. Ended up living in Indonesia as an adult, teaching English there for a bit. And yeah, I've always been one to kind of take a risk and try something new. And probably the place in my life where I experienced the most pain, I should say, from a physical perspective, emotional and psychological, is a time where I ended up being hospitalized. I was training for a marathon, and I had a good life. I was underemployed at the time, and um, but I started having some symptoms of. I thought maybe it was a sore throat. It wasn't quite clear what was happening, and um, but it took a week or so, or maybe even a couple weeks, to end up going to the emergency room. I didn't really want to go because I didn't feel I could afford it, which is another whole thing.
mm,
Um, but yeah, my body was just kind of shutting down, and it surprised me because I felt that I was eating healthy, I was exercising, I was living my life, and yeah, it seemed to come from nowhere. Although I had some symptoms a couple years prior that also came from nowhere, but these were different symptoms. And so I was hospitalized for a week. I went home for a week, and then I was back in hospital for another week. But really, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, and it really surprised me because I didn't know what I could change in my life. I didn't know how I could eat better. I didn't know how I could sleep better or yeah, so anyway, I started to really wonder how I could get out of this, how I could change my life in a way that I could, um, yeah, just experience myself differently. And so I started to get better, and it was a very odd thing. I had to take medication for a couple years, and then I ended up going to massage school, which was unexpected. And I studied. Um, I just wanted to learn about the body through this lens of massage. I didn't actually want to become a massage therapist. And then I learned about um, somatic experiencing, and I got really curious about that work, especially the body and mind. And so then I got into this world of somatic work and in whatever context that looks like. And then I went down that path and personal development. And along the way, I was teaching English the whole time, working with refugees, asylum seekers, immigrants from a variety of different backgrounds and ways they got to the US. And I also worked with foster care. So even in my professional life, I was working with people who experienced different forms of pain and challenge in their life. And in grad school, I studied international peace and conflict resolution. And so I just have always been at some intersection of pain, whether it's my own personal life or someone else doing coaching with others and the pain of their life that they're trying to change where they feel stuck in their life. And so, yeah, there's lots of ways I've been in the exploration of pain, emotionally, physically, psychologically. And I'm really interested in the intersection of where all of these pain points meet. Is it the physical
Mm.
pain that causes the emotional pain? Is it the emotional pain that causes the physical pain? I don't really know, but I'm really curious, and that's what I like to
Mm.
explore.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject, and it's one that, I've looked into very, very deeply over a long, long period of time. And even today, I still don't feel I know everything, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
it could be
Yeah.
a little bit conceited to think that you do know
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Yeah.
the human form is very complex.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, my my view right now is that pain has four primary sources: structural, metabolic, nervous system dysregulation, and emotional trauma. That's how I see it now, but that's not to say
Mm-hmm.
that I won't see it differently in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, 5 years' time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been through my experience, and by working on those areas, I've been able to help people. So there's something in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a it's a very fascinating subject, and it's one that I study every day. I study every
Mm-hmm.
single day because it's just a fascinating subject, and
Mm-hmm.
it's greatly needed. There's a meta-analysis of of chronic pain in the UK, and it suggests that 43% of the adult population suffer from chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
43%.
That's a
That's
pretty
almost
high
one in
number.
two,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a similar study from the US, and it's about half that, which I kind of think that doesn't seem right to me. And the
Mm-hmm.
only the only thing that seems logical to me is that, because obviously most of these studies, people are self-reporting,
Mm-hmm.
and because in the US there's a lot more of a pharmaceutical culture, maybe a lot of people are using pharmaceuticals to overcome their pain, and therefore they're not feeling it. Because
Mm-hmm.
my guess would have been that the rate would be higher in the US than in the UK, because we do have a generally healthier lifestyle, a less well, it's going that way, a less kind of pharmaceutical basis of
Mm-hmm.
medical care. Although, yeah, we're catching up very quick, unfortunately, at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a huge, huge subject, and it's a subject that not only affects a lot of people, but severely affects people's quality of life. And that for me is the key
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's about the
Oh,
quality
yeah.
of life.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? What would you say has been the kind of biggest painful experience that you've experienced yourself?
Mm-hmm. Um,
Put you on the spot now, haven't
yeah. Well, I'm just trying to
I?
think. I'm like, I've got so many. Um, yeah. Um, I would say one of my biggest painful experiences have been more from a psychological place than a physical.
Mm,
And so that's part of the reason I'm really curious about this intersection between the body and the mind, uh, and those four areas that you look at feel really resonant and as it relates to pain.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I would say it's been this quest for love, which
mm,
I think has been the what has felt the most painful for me,
mm.
just this feeling of love. And I I do believe that it's about self-love, right? And how we experience ourself is where that all starts and where that stems from. But
Yeah.
I think for to feel loved by another is a place that I have felt the most pain.
Mm. Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's interesting that you talk about self-love, because it's very rare I work with
Mhm.
someone and that subject doesn't come up,
Mhm.
because, and it's not in my experience, it's not just people experiencing pain. It seems to be a very common thing that people have a lack of self-love,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and and I often think it's probably something that most people don't ever really think about.
Mhm.
And when I observe other people, and not necessarily my clients, but just general people, and you look at the way they live their life and the way they treat themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, you wouldn't treat another person like that.
Mm-hmm.
You certainly wouldn't treat your child like that, and you certainly wouldn't treat your pet like that. But yet you treat
Mm-hmm.
yourself, right? You know, unfortunately, and it's the same. It's the same in the UK as the US, but maybe not quite as bad. But most people treat their body as a garbage can, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Yeah.
they eat is. I mean, you know, if you go to a supermarket in the UK, 98% of it is toxic garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But yet
Well,
probably
yeah.
99% of people get their food from supermarkets,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's just one way in which people, I guess, fall a little bit short in loving themselves is through what
Mm-hmm.
they eat, or it could
Mm-hmm.
be lack of exercise, or it could be over exercising, it could be
Yeah.
not getting to bed on time, or it could be just not getting enough sleep, full stop, or overworking, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't taking that step back and saying, right, how do I love myself?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Are you
Yeah.
familiar with the 5 love languages?
Oh, yes.
Right?
I know there's what quality touch.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I don't remember all the
Yeah. So
five,
there's
but quality
gifts,
time. Mm-hmm.
quality time, um, touch. What else is there? That's 3.
Words of affirmation.
Yes. And there's another one. Anyway, obviously I can't remember them either. But if you know your own love languages, then you
Mm-hmm.
can treat yourself in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Quality time is definitely one for
Yeah.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And I do spend quality time with myself, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so, but I do see the majority of people that come to see me, obviously they're coming to me because there's an issue,
Mm-hmm.
and almost 100% of the time there is a lack of self-love
Mm-hmm.
in that
Oh,
person.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting that you brought that up. So with regards to pain, you know, a lot of people are taught to think that pain is purely mechanical, or, you know, you fall over, you hit your knee, it's all about
Mm-hmm.
your knee kind of thing. From
Mm-hmm.
your perspective, how do you understand pain, and what do you feel is often missed when we only look at the physical body?
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. I feel like the root of so many things is self-love and paying attention to oneself and how one wants to be expressed in the world. And I think a lot of times we have these incidents or hitting the knee on something. It is from a place of maybe not being present with oneself, and not as oh, well, you should have been more present with yourself. It's your fault that you hit your knee. But what are the patterns that are over time accumulating in a way that an injury happens? And clearly, injuries can happen, things can happen. It's not all black and white, I would say. But
Mm,
I do think there are patterns that are being built over time in our movement and thinking and how we engage in the world that starts to make these painful experiences. We can track them often, I think, to other things besides just bumping into something. What was I thinking about when I bumped into this thing? Or um, was I sleeping a particular way for 20 years and now the pain is starting to reveal itself? I noticed for myself, even with the pandemic, I didn't sit that much. A lot of my work, I would move around and stand in a teaching classroom. And so when I went to Zoom, I was sitting down doing the same teaching, but in a seated position on the computer for hours upon hours throughout the day. And it wasn't until a year or two later, I started to notice the impacts of so much sitting. And I would move a lot. During the pandemic, I made sure I was running every day. I was doing burpees every day. And I still could start to notice, oh, sitting this much, I'm starting to have this kind of effect. And that was really fascinating to me. So I do think there
mm,
are a lot of patterns that start to form in ways that kind of help us, or that influence the things that we do where the pain shows up.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and I think I understand why, if someone's got, let's say, shoulder pain, they think that
Mm.
there's damage to the shoulder,
Mhm.
and that's because there is something called nociceptive pain, right? We have
Mhm.
nociceptors throughout our body, and they are, well, according to David Butler and Lorimer Moseley, they would say they're danger warning receptors, right?
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
if you put your finger on something sharp, the nociceptors send a signal to your brain to say there's something sharp, you better get your finger off it, otherwise it's going to cause damage, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, if you fall and you hit your knee, yes, there's nociception, and that's to tell you, right, okay, stop running, stay still. Now that knee needs to take time and it needs to heal. That's
Mhm.
nociception. We've also got neuropathic pain if there's damage to nerves.
Mhm.
So an example might be something else. Someone's got diabetes, for instance, and there's damage to the nerves that can cause pain. But then there's also nociplastic pain. And nociplastic pain is when the nervous system is overly sensitized. And
Mm.
that can be
Mhm.
from diet, it can be from emotions, it can be mental stress, it can be from physical damage. And there's all these inputs. It could be toxins in the environment, which
Yeah.
of course are everywhere
Mhm.
now. So all these inputs into the nervous system are just making it hypersensitized. A bit like, I remember back in the 1980s when car alarms first started coming out,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And they weren't particularly at the right level of sensitivity, let's say. And then if a large vehicle went down the street, all the car alarms would go off, right? Because they
All
were
right.
overly sensitive. And
Mhm.
it's like that in the body. That if our nervous system is overly sensitive, we can feel pain when there's actually no physical damage at all.
Mhm.
We know that there's studies out there, many studies now, where, they've taken MRI scans of people's lumbar spines. And in one
Mhm.
study, it showed that 76% of the adult population have significant disc bulges and no pain,
Mhm.
right? And then there can be other people who have got extreme lower back pain and they do an MRI and they don't find anything wrong,
Mhm.
right? So pain is more complex than most people think, but it is easy to understand why people think that it's okay. If I'm in pain, that must equal physical damage, and that's not
Mhm.
always the case.
Mhm.
And the sad thing is that a lot of medical professionals, practitioners, don't understand that.
Mhm.
And then what do? Oh, we'll give you pain relief, right?
Mhm.
Well, the pain isn't caused by, a deficiency of codeine or
Right.
whatever, right? And pain, for me, pain is there to tell you something. It's there to teach you something. It's there to
Mhm.
warn you of something. So by numbing the signal, you're not going to hear the lesson, or you're not going to learn the lesson, and you're going to keep making the same mistake. And sadly, again, with pharmaceuticals, over time, they're just going to cause more problems. And
Yeah.
you're not dealing with what you're meant to learn from the pain signal.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So I know you talk about integrating the past, pain, and parts of ourselves that can be easier to avoid. How
Mhm.
might avoiding emotions, memories, or parts of ourselves show up as pain patterns in the body? If you've been living with chronic pain and feel as though you've tried everything, it may be because an important part of the picture has been overlooked. In my book, Beyond the Pain, I explore why persistent pain is not always explained by the place where it is felt. Structural and biomechanical factors matter, but so can nutrition, inflammation, sleep, stress, nervous system sensitivity, suppressed emotions, and the meaning your brain gives to what is happening. The book will help you look at your pain through a wider, whole person lens and begin identifying the influences that may be keeping it going. You can find Beyond the Pain in paperback and ebook through the links in the show notes.
Well, I think it sort of relates to what you were saying about how when things are numbed, we're just not aware of that pain, aware of that feeling, the emotion, whatever that might be. And so, and again, I also think it goes back to these patterns. And so, for example, if growing up I was told, oh, don't cry, then I start to numb, or I can't, this is just an example, but I might start to numb, oh, I don't cry. And so I sort of turn off the automatic response of crying. And so I sort of numb that experience of crying. And if that's been what I've done for years and years and years, then I start to lose touch with that feeling, or that what allows me to start crying in the first place. And crying, as we know, is a really helpful human experience and expression.
Yeah.
And yes, it could mean sadness, but it can mean so many other things. And so if I'm bringing that same experience of numbing the crying or whatever it might be, I'm really limiting how my body can express itself. And so, so I really like to slow things down, not to understand it. I think understanding it and trying to talk about, well, this happened and that happened, I think it can be helpful sometimes to acknowledge the story connected to that numbness. But I think what's even more interesting is how to go back to the sensation of it and really slow down the emotion or the bodily memory of it. And so I think that's way more interesting because often that numbing, or we have such a fast-paced world that to slow it down sometimes is so uncomfortable. But the slowing it down is where there can be awareness of that numbness.
Yeah, it's interesting because, your example of crying, it's one way to release what you might consider a negative emotion, right? I mean, I'm not sure that's an accurate term, because I think all emotions are purposeful. Like anger, for instance, can make you move to do something.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I was very angry in 2020, and that really, lit a fire under me to do something about it. But obviously what I did with that anger is I used it in a positive way. I didn't try to suppress it. I didn't pretend I wasn't angry, right? So I think the interesting question is, when you don't release an emotion, what happens to it?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we're constantly having emotions all the time, right? And so in my experience of the suppression of it, it just, again, it's restricting or constricting expression. And what that does over time is numbs that area, or starts to just not be engaged. It interrupts flow of the full expression of one in their life. And I think we have so much, at least in my experience, so much numbing, whether, it is through drugs or memories that we suppress, or experiences that we don't want to touch, because, oftentimes it is attached to something really uncomfortable or painful. Then we're really just limiting ourselves, is how I look at it. And what we get to experience. Because the human body is amazing. And I think there's so much we don't know about it. And there's so much I don't know about it. And I love to research and learn. But I think there's so much that's available to us if we allow ourselves to express everything that wants to express. And of course, in a way that is self-loving rather than creating. I don't think we just express everything, even harming others, to the point of harming others. But how can we express the feelings, the emotions that are suppressed, so that we can breathe more easily, so that we can laugh more easily, so that we can experience joy more easily? Because, the deeper I go in grief or sadness or these negative emotions, it's like I have the inverse of the positive side of, I have more joy, more happiness. And so being able to have that range, and in my personal life, I've experienced, I feel way more alive. I enjoy life so much better. And I can be with the hard things. I can be with the uncomfortable things with greater ease. And in a way, even enjoy that I can feel grief, So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really important to healthily release emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And over 20 years ago now, I studied something called the body talk system.
Okay.
And in that system, they suggest, and I think this is from traditional Chinese medicine, that when we have an emotion, you can release it verbally. I guess
Mm-hmm.
crying would be another way. That would be considered a healthy way. You can digest it through your digestive system. And you
Mm-hmm.
normally, when that happens, you normally get like a gurgling in the tummy.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't release it, it can either get stored in the diaphragm, which is going to tighten your diaphragm, which is going to affect your breathing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which can put you in a state of fight or flight because you're constantly shallow breathing because you're not fully opening and closing the diaphragm.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might be passed on from the diaphragm to anywhere in the fascial system in the body. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes where that emotion gets stored becomes physically
Mm-hmm.
painful. Well, that's one theory. Something else that I've been studying this year is something called tension myositis syndrome. I don't know if you've come across that.
Okay. No, I haven't.
So this is from a guy, he's not with us anymore, Dr. John Sarno, and he suggests that obviously from the work of Sigmund Freud, we have the conscious mind, we have the subconscious mind,
Mm-hmm.
which when I'm trying to explain that to people that haven't come across the concept, think of an iceberg, right? The part of the
Mm-hmm.
iceberg you can see is like the conscious mind. Everything under the water is the subconscious mind. And, Dr. Bruce Lipton says that the subconscious mind is 1,000,000 times more powerful than the conscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what Dr. Sarno believed was that when we have an emotion that's, let's call it a big emotion, it could be anger, it could be rage. If
Mm-hmm.
you were to express anger or rage in today's society, you would be shunned or possibly put in a straitjacket and and thrown in a padded cell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in order to remain in alignment with the culture, you have to suppress the emotion,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Or it might just be an emotion that's too traumatic to want to bring to the conscious. Imagine
Mm-hmm.
a child being abused, right? And then they're stuffing it deep down in that subconscious so they don't have to deal with it. What he suggests is that what the brain does to try and maintain the emotions in the subconscious is to distract the mind. And the
Mm-hmm.
way the distraction happens is by restricting oxygen into tissues like muscles, tendons, or nerves. And they create pain. And what he says is they tend to be painful syndromes that are fashionable at any period of time. Like 20 years ago, it might have been RSI, right? People
Mm-hmm.
started using computer keyboards. Whereas now it might be lower back pain and sciatica as an example,
Mm-hmm.
or carpal tunnel syndrome or something like that. And, he suggests is that once you understand that that's being created by the mind and it's not physical damage to the body, in a lot of people, that is enough to actually get them out of pain because they realize it's
Mm-hmm.
not like you said, you don't necessarily need to recreate the emotion. But then in some instances they do. So some instances he said 20% of the time he would have to refer them for psychotherapy. And
Mm-hmm.
then once they go through the psychotherapy and they've released that trauma and now the
Mm-hmm.
pain doesn't need to be there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which I find really fascinating. I don't agree with everything that he believed,
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting now is there are people that are continuing his work and they're comparing it to modern pain science, and
Okay.
they're kind of agreeing with me, which I'm
Mm.
finding quite interesting. But this is what I've been studying for the last 2 or 3 months, and it's just absolutely
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I I think there's so many different methods, modalities, and this does this and this means this. And I find that I think we just have everyone has their own experience,
Mm,
and we just find whatever lens resonates with us, or we create our own and look for others who then follow our system. But I don't know that how it happens is that important, or to figure that
mm,
out. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm not sure. I mean, I know that in my own work and exploration of a lot of these different methods and philosophers and creators of different systems, I can be really drawn in and say, oh, wow, okay, this is what happens.
mm,
Or, but then I go to another room, another class, another training, and it's something similar. So I kind of look at, but they're saying that what they're doing is uniquely different. So
mm,
I try to look at what are the threads between all these different modalities. And I find that breath is often uh, something that's used in a lot of frameworks. Some
mm,
will look at breath, even somatic experiencing looks at breath as something that can be traumatizing. So in some modalities
mm.
where it's, all right, let's focus on the breath, let's start breathing, or let's exhale or inhale, sometimes that can stir up the trauma. So
Mm,
I don't know. I love studying all these different methodologies and exploring. I'm very experiential in the way that I like to learn. So I often like to go to workshops or trainings to learn and explore what I don't know, or try to find ways
mm,
that interrupt what I think is the, quote unquote way, rather
mm.
than go deeper into um, creating more dogma around what I do believe. I feel like that's so easy to
Yeah,
do. And
absolutely.
so, but yeah, breath is something that I was on a path for, especially last year. I was really curious about breath and
Mm,
finding all the ways I could study and learn about breath. And even, especially through, continuing education for body work, and also reading books, training classes. Um, but then I recently worked with a practitioner who was telling me where I have constriction in my breath. And I'm like, wow, even though I know all of these things, and in learning them, I realize how much I don't know. I have my own areas that I'm blind to, or just in my own experience. So here I am working with others with their breath, and I find it really interesting. But also, where am I not as free in my own breath? But I
mm,
do notice that, and one thing that I have appreciated about somatic experiencing is the idea of slowing things down, kind of even tying back to that unconscious mind working so much, and how much we are not aware of everything that's happening, which is amazing, right? It's so
mm,
important to not be aware of everything. But, someone I was working with the other day, they were experiencing pain in a particular movement. And as we slowed that down, we paid attention to what was happening with their breath. And that was really fascinating. And so when we worked on doing that same movement, but but bringing consciousness to the breath, the pain started to dissipate. And
mm,
so I get curious about how much we override by looking for all these different systems or methods, or drugs, or whatever it is that we're taking, trying to understand something or find the way, when we're actually perhaps making ourselves more stressed, or
mm,
just feeding that fast-paced way of moving through life, and actually missing the simple, easy thing to do, like breathe.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
sometimes it's
sometimes
annoying when it's
sometimes
so
we do
simple.
look.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do look for the complex thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've said many times the human body is very complex, but oftentimes the solutions are very simple,
Oh, yes, yes.
right? Look at how our ancestors would have lived their life. They would have lived a very simple life, right? They didn't have
Mm-hmm.
supermarkets, they didn't have mortgages, right? They didn't have divorce courts, right? I I, I would doubt whether they had chronic pain. Yes, they would have had acute pain, probably possibly more than
Mm-hmm.
us because they're hunting and everything else, building
Mm-hmm.
shelter. Um, but one of the things you said about um, you know, some people, they have their thing and their thing is the thing and that's the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I hear that, I just think, okay, you're not on the right track, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had people come to me with chronic pain, and all I've done is work on their posture, their core stability, their biomechanics, and their pain's gone, right? I've worked
Mm-hmm.
on other people, and all I've done is change their diet, and their pain's gone. I've worked with other people, and I've just worked on um, improving their nervous system regulation, and their pain has gone. I've worked on other people who I've released trapped emotions, and their pain has gone. Other
Mm-hmm.
people, it's been a combination of all those, two of those things, three of those things, all of those things. So
Mm-hmm.
my outlook is that the more tools I have in my toolbox, the more likely I'm going to be able to help the next person that comes to me for help. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
look at it. I don't think I
Yeah.
have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think that my way is the only way. And in fact, I don't even have a way, right?
Yeah.
Because every person is different.
Yes.
I don't treat the 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 pain the person has.
Mm-hmm.
I treat the person who has the pain.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
I know that's
Yeah.
all Hippocrates kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, but yeah, if you can keep your mind open, like I said right from the beginning, yeah, I've been in this world a long, long time, but I can't stop learning. I love learning. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't know it all, and it would be
Oh, yeah.
very obnoxious to think that I did. And as soon as anyone thinks they do know it all, you know that they're not
Mm-hmm.
the person to go and speak to, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
no one knows everything,
Mm-hmm.
well, apart from me.
I'm totally with you there. I feel
Yeah.
it's way more interesting working with a person. And at least what I find interesting is because you can say, "Oh, you have this pain here. It means this. This is what I do with all the people that have this particular pain." But like you're saying, for one person, that emotion, that trapped emotion, might be expressed. For example, going back to the crying, if my response is to cry every time, then I'm might not be releasing something by crying again. It might just be the pattern of avoiding something else. And so to do
Or
the
it can be
same thing.
with crying. It
Hmm.
could also be a way that someone believes they gain attention,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
right? As
Hmm.
a child, maybe, particularly if you had lots of siblings and you didn't
Hmm.
feel you were getting the attention, maybe the way you got attention as a child was to cry, right?
Exactly.
That
Yeah.
that then gets hardwired into your nervous system.
Hmm.
So then by the time you're an adult, if you don't feel you're getting love and attention, what's going to happen? You're going to find a reason to cry. And it might seem
Hmm.
real, right? You might think, oh, I'm
Right,
crying
right,
because of this.
right, right, right.
But actually, the subconscious mind is going, no, you just want more attention. That's why you're crying. But your
Hmm.
conscious mind is
Hmm.
going, oh, it's because so and so said this about me, or whatever, whatever nonsense.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I feel it's important to have more than one tool in your toolbox, and also, for me, I've always had a team of people around me that I can always refer to.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
Like a holistic dentist. I've got Bates method practitioner. I used to have manual therapists, but I've learned, I've
Hmm.
learned how to do all that myself.
Hmm.
Although even now, so I studied sport remedial massage therapy and active release
Hmm.
techniques. There are some things that I still can't do. I might refer to a neuromuscular therapist as an example. Someone's got a
Hmm.
deviated septum. Um, if someone's got kind of religious or belief issues that I feel is part of their issue, again, I've got
Mm-hmm.
someone that I can refer them to for those kind of things, because that's not
Mm-hmm.
my thing yet. Um, but yeah, it does really concern me when someone says my way is the only way.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to the point now where I just kind of roll my eyes now if someone's,
Yeah.
because if you're on social media, you'll see a
Mm-hmm.
thumbnail, and it will just say, the ones I see are things like, oh, if you're over 50, you need to do this one exercise. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
come on,
Yeah.
you know, because everyone's
Mm-hmm.
different, right? I mean,
So
you know,
true.
even if they're saying, right, everyone over 50, you need to squat and you need to squat full range of motion. Well, I know from the work that I do is that depending on the person's structure, their biomechanics, their posture, I might teach them to squat in a completely different way, because one way might
Mm-hmm.
do damage, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I do roll my eyes quite a lot. Maybe I should spend less time on social media.
Well, I started to do that myself because I couldn't handle it all. I was like, I need a break
Yeah,
from this. But yeah,
yeah.
I think there's so much more wisdom available from a team of people. Yeah,
Mhm.
I do the same with referring others, and also people refer their clients to me.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you notice about the relationship between pain, movement, posture, or gesture?
Mm.
If your pain keeps returning, moves from one part of your body to another, or has failed to respond to the treatments you've tried, you may need someone to look beyond the painful area. In my consultations, I take a whole person approach, exploring the potential structural, nutritional, physiological, nervous system, lifestyle, and emotional influences contributing to your symptoms. The aim is not to simply suppress your pain. It is to help you uncover why your system may be producing it and create an individualized plan that helps you participate in your own recovery. If that sounds like the kind of support you've been looking for, you can find out more and schedule a discovery call using the consultation link in the show notes.
Yeah, this is what I find really interesting because I think, especially, I don't know, growing up, I know at least I heard, oh, you got to stand tall, have good posture, or don't slouch, and don't let your belly hang out. I mean, maybe not directly to me, but I just feel in marketing
Mm,
and movies, there's, I hear so many people, even clients I work with, they want, oh, I got to make sure I'm standing this way. But I'm really curious about posture because are we just putting a pattern on top of another pattern and we're actually creating, there's more energy required to hold that pattern, that we're not actually changing anything. And so, yeah, I can run or walk and do exercise to get my heart pumping. And if my posture is in a particular way, I might be doing more damage. And so I'm really curious about posture and how, even going back to breathing again, if I'm not so free in one area, a diaphragm, then my breathing might be off in a way that's actually engaging more of my sympathetic nervous system rather than
mhm,
calming me. So yeah, I find posture so powerful to explore and to really open up and adjust through manual therapy, through breath, however one does that with whatever practitioner they work with, because I find so much gets trapped in posture and movement really helps. And how much better is movement when posture is aligned, or maybe posture is not the best way to say it, but when one's patterns that are restricting the posture are released.
mm. Yeah, well, you're talking about the last 25 years of my career, talking about posture and pain, and
Mm-hmm.
it is a really interesting subject. And when I've done biomechanical analysis on hundreds of people. I've certainly
Mhm.
done over 1,000 analysis over the last 25 years. And there are certain things, patterns that I
Mhm.
see with certain injuries. It would be very easy for me to make assumptions when someone comes in, but I'll still
Mhm.
do very thorough evaluations. As an example, if someone has, let's say they've got knee pain on the right knee,
Mhm.
when I analyze their posture, what I tend to see is they have what's called medial rotational instability at the
Mhm.
hip.
Mhm.
And quite often they'll have what's called hindfoot valgus, which means their ankles are rolling inwards. So their
Mhm.
feet, the forefoot's flattening quite often.
Mhm.
And it'll either be just on the painful side, or it'll be more pronounced on that side than the non-painful side, as an example.
Mhm.
Or if someone has symptoms of a disc bulge,
Mhm.
they will have almost certainly what I would call a flattened lumbar spine,
Mhm.
right? If they've got
Mhm.
symptoms that match facet joint irritation, they will have an excessive lumbar curve. So
Mhm.
that's just two examples. I could talk about the shoulders, the neck, headaches, things that I see 99% of the time with certain injuries. So when I was reading Dr. Sano's work, and he was kind of saying, "Oh, yeah, that's all irrelevant." That was one of the first times I thought, my experience
Mhm.
doesn't agree with that,
Yeah.
because back in 2001, when I did my first year of training with the Czech Institute, we learned lumbar spine pathology, and for the next
Mhm.
2.5 years, the only tool in my toolbox to help people with lower back pain was corrective exercise. That's all. That's
Mhm.
all I had, right? But yet, every single person that came to me, I managed to help them get out of pain, right?
Mhm.
So when someone says posture and pain's just not connected at all, I'm like, no, I think there's more to it than that, right?
Mhm.
Yes, we've seen there are a lot of studies where there are people that have disc bulges or they have arthritic joints and they're not in any pain and they've never had pain, right?
Mhm.
But it just says that, again, the body can be complex. And
Mhm.
my understanding is that the body can cope with a certain amount of, let's call it, dysfunction, right?
Mhm.
Or less than optimal function, let's call it. But once you get to a certain degree of stress on the system or stress on the nervous system, now the body's going to say, okay, now I need to sound the alarm, right?
Mhm.
And it might
Yeah.
not be that the knee is the actual problem. It might be everything else. It might be the poor diet, the getting to bed on time. It might be drinking
Mhm.
alcohol and smoking and everything else that is actually causing the pain, because you're getting to the point where all your cups are full and now they're overflowing. And it just happens to be the knee is the place that's
Mhm.
sending the signal. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Yeah.
So, and again, that's why when I evaluate someone, I'm evaluating everything, not just
Mhm.
the posture and the structure, but it's their diet, what time they go to bed, how do
Oh,
they
yeah.
breathe, how do they
Exactly.
breathe, what are their goals, what are their major
Mhm.
stresses they've had in their life, all of these things, right?
Mhm.
Um, so for me, there's definitely a link between posture and pain. Again, when people they kind of dismiss that, um, when I look at clients and just look at everyone in the world nowadays, in the Western world,
Mhm.
pretty much everyone has forward head posture,
Mhm.
right? Almost everyone. And, computers, mobile phones, tablets, etc., not helping the situation.
Right.
Um, if you think of it this way, think of your head like a bowling ball, right?
Mhm.
Bowling balls are pretty heavy, aren't they? If you held a bowling ball in your hand next to your chest, you could probably hold it there for quite a long time, couldn't you?
Mhm.
If you held it with your arm out straight in front of you, how long do you think you could hold it for?
Oh, yeah, definitely not as long.
Not very long, right? Because your muscles are going to start to ache, get sore, and gradually you're going to drop it. Or
Mhm.
if every inch your head goes forward, it doubles the stress on the extensor muscles of the neck,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? It's putting more tension through those muscles. What's it going to do? It's going to reduce the oxygen
Mm-hmm.
consumption of those muscles, what's that going to do? It's going to cause pain and irritation,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, again, if I go up to anybody, I mean, I wouldn't just do it, in the street, but if I went up to
Mm-hmm.
anyone and placed my thumbs around their kind of upper trapezius, levator scapula
Mm-hmm.
region, I can guarantee you 99% of the population will have tension there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And they've probably also got forward head posture. But it
Mm-hmm.
is also an area that the body will dump stress.
Mm-hmm.
But so you've got mental stress that gets dumped there, but also those muscles are working extra hard eccentrically to try and keep the head in its correct position.
Mm-hmm.
So when people say that, there's no link between posture and pain, I do get a little bit frustrated.
Yeah. I'm with you there. But
Yeah.
the part that I get curious about too is how much. Well, I guess I could back up a little bit. When I first learned about fascial work and structural integration, I was fascinated by how quickly a change could be not just felt, but seen visually by a particular maneuver. And
Mm.
I was so shocked. I'm like, is that really possible? But when you can physically see it, even if you were to measure it, take a picture before and after, and yeah, maybe the body will hold it and realize, wow, this is actually, I've got way more energy available for something else with this shift. Or maybe it's so unfamiliar that it's like, well, I feel actually more safe in the old posture or with that
Yeah.
restriction. But I do find, but then where is it too, where, when I'm working with people and I talk about something, or maybe they're thinking about something that they'd like to see change in their life, and they start to change their posture or breathe differently as they start to think about the things that really light them up and how much
Mm.
one can do that on their own as well. That's what I get curious about too. How much even just changing how we think about something and our body respond to that is also creating a different experience where one might start to say, "Oh, this is more comfortable."
I'll tell you a quick story, and this has been shared on the podcast before. A friend of mine came on the show, and he was the strength and conditioning coach for one of the top
Mm-hmm.
soccer teams in the Premier League in England, and he was working with a player, and he didn't get on particularly well with the rest of the medical team because he was a little
Mm-hmm.
bit unorthodox, I would say, and he got the medical team to come in. He said, "I want to show you something," and this player was injured. And he asked him to stand on two sets of weighing scales, 1 foot on each scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was heavier. I think it was 7 kilos, so about 16 pounds on one side than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pointing to the dials to the medical team, and they're kind of looking, okay, what does that mean, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to the player, "I want you to imagine the best sex you've ever had." And he said he sees this footballer going, and he says, "Are you there?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm there. I'm there." And he looks down at the dials, and they're completely balanced, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he said to the player, "Can you think of the worst moment of your life?" And he was like, "Okay." And he pointed to the dials for the medical team to look, and now he was 8 kilos out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
So he was 7 kilos when he came in, 0. He was completely balanced when he was thinking of something positive. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you think of his most negative experience, he went even further out of balance,
Yeah.
right? That's a good
Mm-hmm.
example of what you was just explaining, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've got another story very similar. This was I wasn't on this training course, but I've heard the story, and it's someone I know. And on the course, the teacher was showing the class how to analyze reflexology points on the foot.
Mm-hmm.
And he was working on this student in the class, and he stopped and he said, someone you know died recently. And he said, "No." And he said, oh, okay, yeah, sometimes these things come up and I'm not always right. And he starts kind of, working his way around his foot, and he stops and he says, are you sure someone you know hasn't died recently? And he's like, no, no. He's like, okay, sometimes I get these things wrong. Anyway, he carries on and he stops and he says, who's died? Someone you know, who's died? And the guy went, oh my God, my best friend died last week.
Oh.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, okay, I'm gonna release the grief from your body through your foot, through the reflexology point. I'm guessing probably on the lung.
Mm-hmm.
So he starts working his way through this reflexology point. Now this guy starts, crying his eyes out in front of all his classmates, very embarrassed. But he was like a wreck afterwards. And the teacher said to him, and this guy was English, he was very left brain, very scientific. And he said to him, see that oak tree outside? He said, I want you to go over to it and I want you to hug the tree, just to get rid of any negative energy, right? The tree will take that energy for you. And this guy's like, what? Okay, I'll do it. I'm a mess. I'm crying. I can't take in what you're teaching anyway. I might as well go and do it. So he went over to the tree, hugged the tree, and then he told another classmate afterwards, he said, as soon as I hugged the tree, I had a vision of my friend in the tree.
Oh.
And his friend said to him, don't worry about me. Like, let me go. I'm where I am. It's really good. Like, you really don't have to worry about me. And so the guy went back into the class and they put him back on the weighing scales. Oh, I didn't tell you, he was like, I can't remember how much. He was like 11 kilos off or something, like 25 pounds. And they put him back on the scales and he was absolutely level.
Wow, that's amazing.
But again, it just shows you that, if you've got a trapped emotion, which he did, right? Grief. He wasn't grieving his friend. He was suppressing it, right? And it caused I don't remember the actual number, but it created quite a weight shift. And if, let's say, he was a runner, if you've got that amount of weight going through one side more than the other, that's got to be creating some wear and tear. Right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And so, someone could end up with, an arthritic knee or anterior cruciate ligament tear or whatever it might be. And they might go to an orthopedic surgeon who does surgery, but actually what they needed to do was to release the grief. I mean, I don't know if you can release, I don't know if you can release grief from a knee with a scalpel. I'm guessing probably not. Right. But again, it just shows the potential complexity. And, I do like to look at the human body like a map. Again, there's a number of stories I've told. I won't repeat them now, but, if you look at like the chakra system, for instance, in the body, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it can point you in the right direction as to where you need to look. Like, I won't do the whole story, but there was one lady, I've told the story enough times, but she had lower back pain and left shoulder and arm pain she'd had for like 25 or 27 years. And pretty quickly I worked out through analysing her chakras and asking her questions that it was all caused by a lack of feeling love from her mother when she was growing up. And as soon as I coached her on how to reach out to her mother and talk to her and share how she felt about her childhood, all the pain went away. She was having to sleep on a recliner chair. She couldn't even sleep in a bed for all that time.
Oh, wow.
Right. But as soon as she dealt with that, I don't know, probably was anger, rage of, she didn't feel loved as a child. Now she's got no pain now. I mean, she had accident. She hit her lower back and she fell off a bike and landed on her arm. But, that they both should have healed within a few weeks, not 25, 27 years, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's when I think, if someone's listening to this and they're in pain, if they think to themselves, well, okay, I fell and I hit my knee, depending on what tissue was damaged, like, well, how long should that take to heal naturally? It might be a few days, a few weeks, a few months. And if you're several years down the line, the chances are that whatever damage was in that knee is healed. So then you've got to ask the question, so why are you still in pain? Because it's probably not damage.
Right.
Potentially it could be. Like if you're continually traumatizing the knee, right? If you're a marathon runner or something, potentially you could be continually traumatizing and causing nociceptive pain. But the likelihood is that it's nociceptive pain. Right? It's not caused by tissue damage. It's caused by the mind or emotions, or whichever way you want to look at, or overly sensitized nervous system. It's a fascinating subject.
So fascinating. And I feel like some of these things that we try to measure, at least, the scale is a great example of stepping on one and the other and experiencing a shift and stepping on the scale again and noticing that the numbers have changed. And I get really curious about these kinds of types of interventions or changes that are maybe a little on the outside the norm of what we like to look at as science, or but I feel in doing this work, you see things like that, or I see things like that, which make me start to question and get really curious about things that are happening in ways we just cannot predict or understand, which is why I love, as you would, to continue to research and learn all these different ways of working with.
I've had experience. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I don't know. You can go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I've had experiences doing the body talk system, the emotion code, where I've done a session, and they might have come in and said, I could pick anywhere. I've got elbow pain, right? And I've done a session, nothing to do with the elbow has come up, right? And either straight after the session or the next day or a few days later, they say to me, all my pain's gone. And they say, how did that happen? And I say, I don't know. And I said, to be honest, it's not that important to me. What is important is if the pain is gone and it's going to stay gone. That's the important thing. And I wouldn't say I've had loads and loads of experiences like that, but I've had enough. I've had enough to really understand that we don't always understand. And one of the things that Dr. Bradley Nelson says, who developed the emotion code and the body code, is that anything can cause anything.
Yeah.
And when you look at it in that way, it's like, well, how are we meant to work it out if anything can cause anything? Sometimes there's logic to it, for sure. Like, the lady that I said who, she didn't feel loved by her mother, we dealt with that and all her pain went, right? And from a chakra perspective, that made complete sense. But sometimes, I even did a energy healing on a guy who thought I was a charlatan. He only came to try and expose me, and he didn't tell me what was wrong with him. And I did a session, and he got off the table and looked at me like, what did you just do to me? And I was like, what? And he said, well, I didn't tell you I've had this ankle pain or heel pain for years. And he said, I thought you was a charlatan. I was coming here to expose you. And he said, but I can't feel any pain in my ankle. What did you just do to me? Nothing about his ankle or his heel came up in the session. And, I continued to see him regularly after, I didn't do any more treatments on him, just did one. And I saw him regularly afterwards. And as far as I know, that pain never came back. So how do you explain that? I can't explain it. It's very, very interesting.
So interesting.
So in your work, what role does the past seem to play in terms of persistent or recurring pain? Like, what role does it play for you?
Yeah, what I've noticed in the people that I work with is it can be in the story of it. And so if the story it's the same story, maybe it's talked about in a different way. Maybe it's a story about this person, which reflects this other person in the past. It's the energy behind the story, I should say. So maybe the person's talking about someone they interacted with, but it sounds the same as they talk about the years with their parent or partner, or that younger injury, that the younger thing that never was acknowledged or released. And so once we go back and really address that story, and the way that we address it is through gesture and movement. So it's really paying attention to the sensations that come up when that story is being expressed. And it's really about interrupting the story and letting the body do its own expression and letting that get acknowledged. And I find that once that story, or the tendency to go to that story, gets severed, it frees the pain. And so that's the thing that I often try to work with clients is, how can we interrupt story creation and just be in the present? How can we pay attention to the birds singing, or feeling the temperature of the room, or how can we bring our awareness to the things that are present rather than letting the mind go to a story? And I find that if one can do that, it starts to release the pain.
Interesting. So it's like you're distracting.
Or it's almost, I would say almost the opposite. Like the story is the
Okay.
distraction. Yeah. So
Right.
it's freeing up the distraction.
So you're distracting from the distraction.
I guess that's one way to look at it. Yeah. Or intentionally choosing something else.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I guess by doing that, you're training the mind to realize that perhaps it's not physical, like it's not the body's not damaged, whether that's conscious or subconscious awareness. Yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you do within somatic healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I really, really try to interrupt that story. Often the people that I work with are trapped in a story. If it's purely physical, then we do sort of the opposite way. But it's less about the story and more about the movement. So we'll go to the gesture or the movement and slow that down, get really present with it. What sensation do I feel when I make this movement or this gesture? And we bring the breath into that, or whatever it is that's showing up. I can't say it's the same for everyone, but often someone's breath is responding to that moment of pain. And if we bring consciousness to how one is breathing, that can also release that automatic thing that's happening without their awareness.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess it's also helping to regulate the nervous system as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting. So how do beliefs, perception, or the meaning someone gives to their pain influence the way they experience it?
Well, yeah, I could make up a story about that.
Mm. Stories are good.
Yeah. But I think it really is, I can just speak for myself, right? I know for myself, when I get really hooked on something or a belief, then I start to look for that everywhere or find evidence that that belief is true. And if I'm really hooked on it, I can start to even try to convince others that this is the true thing, or and really that then becomes a distraction, and it limits me from all the other possibilities out there. And so, yeah, I find that allowing myself to not be so attached to a belief is where I find the most freedom and presence, and I can enjoy my life in a different way. That's freer,
Mm.
that's more exploratory. So I try to bring in imagination, possibility when I find myself trapped in a belief, because then I start to orient around that belief in a way that my mind starts to create the story. I start to, my whole life can become that belief.
Yeah, someone once said, a belief worth having is worth questioning. Right? Yeah, I mean, I see, when it comes to belief and perception or meaning of pain, again, going back to, someone's got back pain, they go to their doctor, they get an MRI, and they say, oh, it's the disc bulge that's causing the pain. Well, if you believe that, your perception is the pain is being caused by damage. And every time the pain goes up, your belief is you're doing more damage, right? But if you understood that 76% of the adult population have bulging discs without any pain, would you have a different perception?
Yeah.
Right? Again, it might be. The disc might be causing the pain. It might be, right? But just looking at a disc, just looking at an MRI scan will not tell you that, right? You've got to look at a lot of other aspects to work out whether that's correct or not. Now, I had an incident in 2013 when I had severe lower back pain, sciatic symptoms, numbness, pins and needles, dropped foot, the whole thing, right? And I'm pretty sure that, and I went and got an MRI, and I had a herniated L4-5 and I had a bulging L5-S1, which is exactly where my symptoms were in my dermatomes in my leg, which is, I just wanted an MRI to confirm that that's what it was. Now, was it definitely that caused it? I can't be sure. My belief at the time was that's definitely it, right? Now, could it be, as I mentioned earlier, tension myositis syndrome? It's possible. However, I wasn't aware of that concept 13 years ago. I didn't address any emotional aspects. I treated it with structure, metabolic, like nutrition, and nervous system regulation, right? And it got better, and I'm perfectly fine now, right? It took me about 22 months, and it takes about 18 months for a disc to heal after something like that. But I've got to be open, right? I can't be dogmatic and say it was definitely physical. My gut feel is it probably I still think it was, but there's got to be a part of my mind open enough to think, actually, maybe that was tension myositis syndrome. Maybe that damage had been there for years and I just didn't know, right? So it's, as we say, body is complex, right?
Yeah. Even when I had my hospitalized experience, I did not work through that from an emotional place. It was my diet, it was my sleep, it was my lifestyle. And years later, I came back to it from an emotional place. And it's interesting because as I was doing some of that work, I would feel some of the symptoms or even smells in the hospital that I forgot so it's very interesting how memories or the experience of going through something remains with us, even unconsciously. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even from, Dr. Sarno's perspective, quite often when he worked with his patients, some of them would get worse before they got better, because if they're bringing these emotions to the surface, the pain has to ramp up to try and suppress, to distract you from them, right? So sometimes it can get worse before it gets better. But, simple things like, I might walk past someone and I get a smell and it reminds me of someone I dated 30 years ago, right? So we've all got that. We've all got examples of that, but the same thing can happen with pain as well, right?
Yeah.
So I've got one more question for you.
All right.
So there's a lot of people who understandably want pain gone as quickly as possible. But what can happen when someone learns to stay present with pain without immediately trying to fix, fight, or suppress it?
Hmm. In my experience, when you stay with it, you can actually move through it much faster. So it's kind of like counterintuitive,
Mm,
but it's allowing it to be experienced, to be acknowledged, to be seen. And sometimes the avoidance of it or the mm, going around it to try to fix it is what, in my experience, causes more pain, more disconnection from self. And I think it goes back again to that point of self-love. Because if we are truly being with ourselves, if I am truly being with myself and my pain, by addressing it, acknowledging it, is me loving myself.
mm,
And regardless of what happens on the other side of that acknowledgement, of that being with it, my capacity for pain, my capacity for the thing I don't want to feel, it's like flexing a muscle. It expands, right? There's more range
mm,
available. And so I find, and that's often what I do with clients, I'm always looking at where can we get to the thing that's the most uncomfortable. Maybe most is, but what's uncomfortable that we can address and be with it without going to a place where we can no longer be present to it. But how much can we address that so that the story just dissolves? There's no story. If I can work with someone one time and that's all it takes, that's amazing. If it takes more time, which it often can, or there might be a referral somewhere else, that's always my goal. How can we just
mm.
release what's causing that pain rather than finding other ways to distract ourselves from feeling it? And that's my own journey with myself too. How can I not avoid? Avoiding is really fun. But being with is way more interesting and way
Mm.
more beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That reminds me of someone once said, if you feel like life's getting on top of you and you're feeling really stressed, imagine an empty swimming pool
Hmm.
and imagine filling the swimming pool with all your stresses. Fill it right to the top with all your stress. And once you fill this pool with stress, dive straight into the middle and see what happens. Normally, the stress just disappears. It's quite a weird, strange concept, but it does work. It's really interesting. Um, I lied to you. I've got another question.
Okay.
One more question. So, if someone who's um, living with persistent pain and feels disconnected from their body, what would be a simple, safe way to begin exploring presence, curiosity, or somatic awareness?
Mhm. One thing I find that's useful that I do with myself too is sometimes just placing a hand on the area where the pain is experienced, even if it's, um, it could be on one's head, if it's something, a thought, a memory. But if it's a physical pain and it can be addressed somewhere in the body, just placing a hand there and letting the hand feel that part of the body and letting that part of the body be felt by the hand. It's very simple. It requires slowing down. It might be a few minutes, it might be a longer period of time, but just breathing while also feeling oneself, feeling that pain can bring awareness to an area that maybe has been avoided. Or sometimes, I find even doing that with clients, they might notice that they have pain somewhere they didn't even realize. It's just by slowing down and feeling a particular part of one's body. It's like just brings that awareness. Even for myself, I've noticed, an area or areas where I'm like, oh, I can feel my hand feeling that part of my body, but my body has less feeling of my hand. And that's really interesting. So what happens if I just bring my attention there and let that part of my body feel supported, feel acknowledged, feel seen, and then it starts to wake up, it starts to be more available. And that it's very simple, but I find it can be really effective.
Hmm. Yeah. And again, something so simple, but quite often the most simple things are the most effective.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Great stuff. So, Lindsay, what's next for you?
What's next for me in the day or just in life? Or
You can answer that however you want.
yeah, well, I've got another meeting after this, so that's what I'll be up to. And then spending time with family. I have a family member who's actually going through a lot of pain right now, so spending a lot of time with them and yeah, just being present with them. And yeah, so that's what I've got planned for the rest of the day.
Cool. Good stuff. And where can people find you online?
So I have a website, somalingua.com. Soma refers to the body, lingua, tongue. So language of the body is what I'm really curious about. How can we be more expressed in our bodies and our life? Yeah.
Awesome. And obviously that, your details will be in the show notes as well if people want to check that out. So Lindsay, thank you
Sounds
so
great.
much. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today, and I just want
Yeah,
to
thank
really
you.
thank you for your time.
Oh, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it was great. So that's it from Lindsay and me for this week, but be sure to tune in same time, same place next week on Beyond the Pain. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Pain. If this episode resonated, please follow the show, leave a review, or share it with someone you know who's been struggling. And remember, pain is not permanent. With the right insight and support, you can turn it into power. Until next time, stay open, stay strong, and keep moving beyond the pain.